Hey, mamas. Welcome back to another episode of Knit Your Stress Away, the podcast for any mom who's ready to pick up the amazingly stress-relieving hobby of knitting. And I am Nadine Medina. I'm your host here on the podcast, and I am also here to help you learn this craft from the very beginning, even if you have never touched needles before. And today I want to talk to you about something that might be a little baffling to you as you're looking at learning how to knit, and that is maybe feeling stuck about what project to choose for your very first project. And I have a little story for you, so let's get into this episode. Welcome to Knit Your Stress Away. Are you a mom who feels overwhelmed, craving a creative outlet, but unsure where to start or how to fit it into your already packed day? I have dedicated this podcast to help you discover practical, guilt-free self-care strategies through the calming practice of knitting. I'll help you break free from the overwhelm, quiet the noise and comparison of social media, empowering you to pick up your knitting needles instead and embrace moments of rest, creativity, and mindfulness. Hi, I'm Nadine, a mom, wife, and passionate knitter. I first learned to knit as a teenager from my grandmother back in Germany, but for some reason, I put my needles down in my 20s. It wasn't until 2020, when everyone was searching for ways to ease the anxiety of the unknown, that I picked knitting back up, and something amazing happened. I found peace and joy in the cozy, calming rhythm of knitting, and now I'm so excited to share my practical tips and habits with you, so you can reclaim your time, recharge, and rediscover the things that bring you happiness. It's time to ditch the endless scroll on social media and focus on what truly matters, your well-being. So if you're ready to take control of your stress, ditch overwhelm and social media comparison, rekindle your creativity, and recharge with a hobby you love, this podcast will guide you every step of the way. Take a deep breath, grab your knitting needles, and let's start creating a life with less stress and more joy, one stitch at a time. All right, welcome back to this episode. We are on episode 59 of the Knit Your Stress Away podcast. Very soon, we're coming up on our first year anniversary here on the podcast, which is so exciting. Thank you so much for sticking around with me all year and, following this journey, but also hopefully getting into your own knitting journey here at this point. And if you are still feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't know where to start, keep listening, and there's things that are coming just for you. But I do have a little something now that you can actually download for free, and that will take you through 5 simple steps to become a knitter. It is a guide that has everything that you're going to need in order to not only pick up the perfect tools that you are going to need, actually my favorite tools, I have links in there for you, but also links to video tutorials that I've created for you, so that you can learn the basic stitches, casting on and casting off, which is the beginning and the end of any knitting project. And it also has my favorite beginning patterns in there with links as well, where you can download them, and the recommended, yarn and needles as well. So you can go ahead and download that at the link guide.thenittingmamas.com. I will put this link in the show notes. Go ahead and check there so you can click straight on there and then go ahead and download that guide for you. You are also welcome to jump over into the Beginners Knitters community that is on Facebook. It's our same community with multiple amazing ladies who are knitters and have been knitters for a while, so they're very happy to help you too. I welcome you in that group. I invite you into that group so that you can really get the support you need from the very beginning. So today we're talking about choosing your first knitting project, which can be a little bit of a daunting decision. I totally get that. It's funny how I didn't think about this being a topic for the podcast until I recently thought about that very first project that I picked up again after I got back into knitting, or after I took a break from knitting, I guess, when I got back into knitting back in 2020 during the pandemic. And my thing was that I kind of was like, I already know how to knit. Let's just see if I still like it. But I had not really considered the fact that I may not be a very fast knitter anymore. I don't know if I ever was before that, because it had been like over 20 years since I last picked up my needles. But I saw all these gorgeous projects out on Instagram and on websites and, from designers. And I was like, wow, all these are amazing. And I went completely ambitious. I did pick a project that was labeled for beginners. So I definitely did that because I was like, nope, I'm not starting with something complicated. I don't even know if I still know how to do this. So turns out it's like riding a bike, sort of ish. You do need more practice though, in order to, make something that might be a little bit bigger. And that was my mistake. It was beginner friendly in multiple ways. So that is true. So it wasn't like it was hard to make. But my mistake that I made was it was a cardigan, and it was not only a large project, but it was also made from a cotton blend, which is a relatively thin yarn, and very small needles, which is normal. When you have a thin yarn, you usually knit with thinner needles. So that's something that you're going to learn inside the guide as well, and why that is. But when you're a beginner and you're not very fast, it can be very long to knit something that big out of very thin yarn. And even now that I have a lot of practice and years of practice, and I, welcome a challenge, I have another similar cardigan kit, including the yarn and the pattern, in my drawer right behind me here in my office. And it's been waiting there for a few years. And I haven't touched it because I worry that I'm going to get bored of it. So eventually I will start it, but I will definitely have other projects at the same time so that I can switch back and forth. But definitely, take my story with the grain of salt. Make sure that you don't pick something that is too daunting, that is too overwhelming at once in the beginning, because you may feel this feeling of, I'll never get this done. This is frustrating. What did I get myself into? This is boring. I don't want to do this anymore. And it's like literally the opposite of what I want you to do with this hobby. I want you to have fun. I want you to find it joyful. I want you to have a quick win. And I think that really is what matters most in the beginning. Specifically, this can be a fun thing at any time throughout your knitting journey, to have a small, quick project that you can finish in a really short time and have this yes, I did that. This is what I did with my hands and from scratch. But in the beginning, I think it's specifically important because it builds confidence and also momentum. So you're not going to get stuck for weeks or months even on the same projects thinking, what the heck? Why did I try this? I don't like this at all. But instead, you're like, wow, I really did this, and I can make this, and I make something else. And that's where I want to take the stress out for you when you're just starting. I want to urge you to not only choose a project that is straightforward with basic stitches. And side note, I did that. So mine was very straightforward. It had literally only rectangles to knit. So no decreases, no increases, no picking up stitches, nothing, that's maybe not beginner friendly necessarily. And it also only had one stitch, which is the knit stitch. And when you knit back and forth in the same stitch, you will get something called garter stitch. That's the pattern. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. And it's very squishy. So it's like a really nice texture. But it was just way too big, way, way, way too big for just the same project. It also had the same color. So speak about boring. But I'm thinking more in the direction of small scarves or, little, like the tiny little scarves you may have seen that people tie around their neck when they wear like a tank top or a t-shirt. They're just more decoration than they're supposed to keep you warm. But those are really cute. You can knit dishcloths. You can knit little coasters. You can knit headbands, which if you've been, actually, I'm going to talk about what I'm doing right now here in a little bit. Let's not go there yet. But those projects are super quick wins. They help you practice your stitches. And because they get done so quickly, they help you build confidence and also give you something super useful or giftable when you're done. And I think that is a really fun side effect of picking a simple and small project for a beginner. I do have some of my favorite patterns in the guide that I just mentioned, so go ahead and download that. Super, super simple to do and very quick to complete. So once again, this is something that I always talk about. The goal is always to focus on the progress and not on the perfection, of course. So don't get hung up on maybe making mistakes, but that's why you're picking a simple project, right? Another tip that I have for you today is to use a project that has a chunkier yarn and bigger needles, which also go hand in hand. So usually when you have a chunky yarn, you are recommended on the yarn label to use a thicker needle as well, so a bigger needle size. I always recommend to check either the pattern, which will indicate if this is the yarn you're knitting with. I recommend using this size of needles, but then also to check if that actually matches your knitting style and your tension. Or you can also find that information on the label of the yarn that always has a recommendation as to the size of either the crochet hook or the knitting needles. So there's a video that I have made before too. I'm going to post it into our Facebook community that goes over what the yarn label actually tells you. So it's a good bit of information to take into, considering what project you're going to knit. But I love chunky yarn projects because it knits up very quickly. And again, you have that completed something from scratch feeling, which is just a confident booster. And I just love that feeling so much. I just finished a small project that took me literal hours. Like it wasn't even a whole day. It was just a couple hours that I completed between Friday and Saturday. And it was just so fun to have something small that is like done in no time. I love it. My last tip is to start multiple little projects at once, which might sound a little counterintuitive at first as you're starting out, but hear me out. Because when you're working on just one project, especially as a beginner, you might hit a point where you feel either stuck, bored, or frustrated, potentially, which, by the way, is a good reason to come into our community so that we can help you through that moment when you have any issues or you're feeling stuck or whatever it is. So just keep that in mind. You can get there at thenittingmamas.com/group. But when you have multiple projects going at once, and they may all be tiny, they may all be little as you're starting out, but it lets you just switch between things, like I was saying in the beginning, when you feel a little bored by that one color or, by that one, whatever the reason is why you're feeling bored with that project. In the beginning, it might just be the same stitch. So you're practicing and you're getting used to it. And I want you to do that because the more you practice, the easier it all becomes, just like everything. But I literally sometimes find myself getting bored with the color that I'm knitting. I'm like, I've seen this thing forever now. So I just switch out and it feels different. It's just great. So that's just my last tip that I have. However, I do want you to kind of think about the fact, I don't want you to be overwhelmed by having multiple projects at once. So if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, that sounds like too much right now, start with one, make it really small, and then give yourself that amazing feeling of having completed a project before you cast on the next one. What else? What am I talking about? I want to talk about what I'm currently knitting. That's right. I am still finishing my Kyla sweater. Please don't get tired of me still working on that thing. But because I'm doing multiple things here and there, the main project is usually still hanging around. I have also seen so many new fun projects out on Instagram, over on lionbrand.com, that I may or may not have added a few more things to my list of projects that I want to complete at some point. And I also always have kind of like a hard time picking the next thing that I want to work on. So what I did instead is something super fun, because I actually have a live workshop coming really soon. It actually happens this year still. For you, the mom who is a beginner, ready to get started on their first project. And stay tuned for all the details, but I can give you this detail right now that I'm actually working on a small little project. I completed one. I'm working on another one in a different color so that you can see the variety. It's a small little project that will be completely doable and makeable for you, the beginner, in maybe not in the workshop, you're not going to complete it, but you're going to learn exactly the steps on how to make that thing. And then afterwards, you're going to get everything you need in order to finish it. And it could be something for you. It could be something that you give to somebody else, but you will be armed with knowing how to do this. And you can then even make more after the fact to gift to somebody for Christmas. It's going to be so fun. Stay tuned. Stay here with me on the podcast as I'm coming out with more details and how to sign up for this workshop coming to you very soon. Meanwhile, if you're ready to dive into knitting, the free beginner's guide is right here for you now. It just came out. I just finished it. And yeah, you can become a knitter in 5 easy steps. The guide has everything that you need to get started, links to my favorite beginner tools, step-by-step video tutorials for the basics that you need to learn, and a curated list of my favorite simple patterns that I think are perfect for beginners. So grab your copy. You can find it at guide.thenittingmamas.com. Start that stress-free knitting journey today. And please don't forget to join us in the community so that we can help you along the way and support you in any way you need. That's it for this Knit and Tell Friday, mamas. I hope you are having a wonderful weekend. I can't believe we're getting close to Thanksgiving already, and enjoy your weekend. And I will talk to you next week right here on the Knit Your Stress Away podcast. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on today's episode. I hope you're walking away with a bit more inspiration and a few ideas to make your self-care a priority. If today's chat gave you a little boost, I'd love it if you could leave a 5-star review on iTunes. This helps other moms discover the podcast and start finding more calm and creativity in their day as well. And don't forget to join us over in the Knitting Mamas community on Facebook by going to thenittingmamas.com/group. Thanks again, and remember, you deserve time for yourself to recharge and feel your best. Catch you next time on the Knit the Stress Away podcast.